Welcome to Hands on Health, the podcast all about living your healthiest life on the coast. I'm your host, Felicia Struve. One of the first changes I noticed when I was pregnant was that I couldn't eat all the same things I once had. The smell of cooking meat turned my stomach, especially if it was fried. And I risked feeling ill anytime I went too long without eating. Overnight, I became obsessed with food. My guest today is certified nurse midwife Corinne Almquist. We're talking about how to eat if you're trying to get pregnant, what to eat for a healthy pregnancy, and how certain foods, vitamins, and teas can help ease some of those pesky pregnancy complaints. Thanks for joining me for episode 28 of Hands on Health. Welcome, Corinne.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So I'm super excited about our topic today because we're talking about nutrition in pregnancy. And I know for me, when I was pregnant, food was a very big deal. It was like I couldn't eat certain things and I wanted to eat certain things. And, it was just, I was always thinking about food. Just to be honest.
As most of us are.
Yeah. So what advice do you give someone when they come in for an early prenatal appointment? What sort of advice do you give them about food and eating?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember in pregnancy is that healthy eating in general is really just the best thing that you can do for you and your baby. Most of our diets are lacking in some way or another, but if you can eat a healthy diet and steer away from fast food or processed foods or sodas or, a lot of things that Americans really enjoy, that's one of the best positive changes that you can do for your own health and your baby's health. And pregnancy is an opportunity to make really positive changes in your life that can then stay with you for a lifetime. And no matter how many vegetables you're eating, prenatal vitamins are still important. So that's one of the first things that we talk about when someone comes in for their first visit is, are you taking prenatal vitamins? Ideally, it would be best to start taking a prenatal vitamin 3 to 6 months before conception so that you can make sure that your stores of folic acid are plentiful before you conceive. A lot of really important fetal development happens in the really early stages of pregnancy when a lot of women haven't even realized that they're pregnant yet. So that way it can be nice to start a little bit early. But that being said, if you don't start taking vitamins until after that first positive test, that's okay. Most babies develop normally regardless, but you can really give them a leg up if you have folic acid on board before conception. We talk a lot about folic acid in pregnancy and its importance in preventing neural tube defects specifically, and it is really important, but there are also a lot of other nutrients that are really important in pregnancy. So it's worth checking your prenatal vitamins and making sure that it has some of the other critical nutrients too. So if you want, I can kind of talk about some of the nutrients and what to look for.
What are those key things that...
Yeah, so calcium is really important. So that builds strong bones and teeth for you and for baby. Definitely possible to get enough from your diet. Usually dairy products, dark leafy green vegetables have a lot of calcium, but helpful to have that in a prenatal vitamin too. Iron is really important, especially in pregnancy. A lot of women become anemic in pregnancy, and iron helps red blood cells deliver oxygen to the fetus. Having iron in a prenatal supplement and eating foods that are rich in iron, like lean red meat, poultry, fish, legumes, sometimes cooking with a cast iron skillet can actually also help you absorb iron. So that can be a good thing to do as well. Iodine is essential for healthy brain development. That's in most table salts. So most women are able to get enough of that. Choline is something that actually most prenatal vitamins don't have. So sometimes you have to kind of go out of your way to find that one. That one's important for development of baby's brain and spinal cord. And it's most present in eggs if you're trying to get it from your diet, but it's hard to eat enough eggs to get enough choline. So that's one that I might recommend seeking out additionally. A lot of the regular vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, definitely vitamin D, especially for those of us who live in Astoria. We don't get enough of it. Most prenatal vitamins have a little bit of vitamin D, but usually not enough. Like your typical prenatal vitamin usually has about 600 IU vitamin D. And we usually recommend about 2,000 a day for pregnancy. So usually you have to get an extra supplement for that. And then the B vitamins, vitamin B6 and B12, are also really important. So they help with the nervous system and help form red blood cells. Also available in food, but sometimes it can be good to get from a prenatal vitamin as well. So those are kind of the big ones that I would look for in prenatal vitamins.
That's a huge list.
It is a big list, but most prenatal vitamins have like 100 different things on them. So most of them have most of those.
Well, I know for myself, I got some of those in liquid form when I was pregnant. So like I had problems with the iron tablets causing constipation. So I did a liquid iron and I did liquid calcium. I think we talked about that before because I was having leg cramps and that seemed to help. So yeah, there were other options for some of those.
Yes, some of them you can just up, in the foods that you're eating, and it certainly doesn't have to be a pill that you have to swallow. Some prenatal vitamins also come in gummies, which can be helpful for women who have trouble swallowing a pill or have some sort of heightened gag reflex in the first trimester, which is common. So that can be an option too.
That brings up the question of, I know for myself, with one of my pregnancies, any sort of sugars caused me to feel more nauseous. And so, you mentioned it's a great time to make good dietary changes and lifestyle changes. That I cut out all the sweets with that first pregnancy.
Yeah, sometimes babies tell us exactly what they need.
Exactly. Now, my second pregnancy, he wanted lots of sweets, so that was a little harder.
Yeah, and of course, so many women feel really crummy their first trimester and are nauseous and are vomiting. And so as much as we talk about really good nutrition, that's sometimes just not possible in the first trimester. Sometimes you just have to eat what you can tolerate and that your body can keep down. And that's okay. Whatever gets you through that first trimester is probably fine. But once you start feeling better and you can vary your plate and your diet a little bit more, start adding in all those colorful fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one of the great things about our bodies too, is that we store a lot of those nutrients. So we do have some stores for that first trimester if you're not eating very well. Right. If you're not able to keep it down, yeah.
Another good reason to eat well before you get pregnant too, so that your stores are high going in.
So you had mentioned, when we chatted before, you mentioned something about that for women who are trying to conceive and possibly having some trouble, that diet can play a role in helping them to conceive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly weight loss for women with higher BMIs can be really helpful for conception. So, typically if you can reduce your BMI by 1 or 2 points, you're much more likely to be able to conceive. Part of the reason for that is because sometimes extra body weight can give the body an excess of estrogen, and that can sometimes prevent ovulation. So a lot of women find that if they can lose a little bit of weight, they start to ovulate more frequently. Other women who are really anemic might have trouble conceiving, so making sure that you're getting enough iron and protein on board. Sometimes women who are protein deficient have difficulty conceiving. So again, women who have a BMI that's under the recommended BMI also might have some issues with conceiving, just because their bodies don't have those stores built up to be able to achieve a pregnancy. So really aiming for kind of that normal BMI range when you're trying to conceive as much as you can. Some of us will never get there, but just trying to make the really positive changes before you try to get pregnant.
Yeah, that sounds like great advice for after you're pregnant too, because that baby weight stays on sometimes, or some women lose a lot of weight when they're breastfeeding, and so trying to find a nice balance for your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for women who do develop gestational diabetes, which is really common, I've heard from multiple women that this is the best thing that ever could have happened to me, because I really wasn't thinking about what I was eating before, or how much I was eating, or what kinds of foods that I was eating. And having that trigger in pregnancy where they had to pay really close attention to exactly what they were putting in their body and when, was a tool that they could then use moving forward to keep them at a healthy weight and keep their blood sugars low, and put them at much lower risk of developing diabetes later on.
Well, and also so important for being able to be there and be active with your child too, because man, those little guys, they take it out of you. So having that energy nice and stable is helpful when you've got a new baby.
Yes.
So you mentioned something about paying very close attention to your diet in pregnancy. And there are some women who already have a special diet before they conceive. Are there certain types of diets that women shouldn't follow in pregnancy?
Yeah, in general, dieting by calorie restriction is never a good idea in pregnancy, just because you need those calories in order to grow a baby. You don't necessarily need twice as many calories as you would normally eat in a day. Eating for two isn't really a thing. The average pregnant woman needs about 300 more calories than she would if she weren't pregnant. But generally, drastically changing your diet during pregnancy isn't a good idea, just because your body is already going through so many changes that you don't want to shake it up too much. That being said, unless you're eating a really unhealthy diet, and then, improvements are always good. So things like the keto diet or other diets that are really low in carbohydrates, we also don't recommend in pregnancy. Glucose from carbohydrates is the main energy source for baby's growth and development. So those are really important to be getting in pregnancy. But complex carbohydrates are the important ones. So whole grains, vegetables, that type of thing, not white bread or white pasta that turns to sugar immediately. A lot of women come into pregnancy being vegetarian or vegan, and it can absolutely be possible to have a really healthy pregnancy if you adhere to one of those diets. It just might take some extra consideration to make sure that you're getting enough iron and protein. And a lot of vegetarians and vegans are also a little bit deficient in vitamin B12, because B12 mostly comes from animal products. So just making sure that they supplement with that is recommended also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good advice. I think that a lot of people also worry about weight gain in pregnancy. Yeah. I mean, that just seems to be the topic. What's the recommendation these days for weight gain?
Right. So again, it kind of depends on what weight you are coming into the pregnancy. So for women who have a BMI between 18.5 and up to 25, which is considered a normal BMI, the general recommendation for weight gain is between 25 and 35 pounds. Most of that happens in the second and third trimesters. Again, a lot of women lose weight in the first trimester just because they're having food aversions or they're throwing up or just not feeling well in general. For women who are a little bit over that normal BMI, we usually recommend a weight gain of around 15 to 25 pounds. And then for women who have a BMI of over 30, we usually recommend a range of about 11 to 20 pounds. So if you come into the pregnancy with a little bit higher BMI, generally we recommend less weight gain. And then again, if your BMI is under 18.5, so if you're under the recommended BMI, you want to gain a little bit more in pregnancy. We usually recommend around 28 to 40 pounds. And that's, again, of course, if you only have one baby. If you're carrying twins, you probably need to gain a little bit more.
Yeah, my twin pregnancy, I gained quite a bit. So.
Yeah. That being said, I think we don't stress too much about weight gain unless we truly see somebody who's not gaining weight at all. Then we might be concerned about how baby is growing. But there are plenty of women who gain 60 pounds in a pregnancy. And even though that's not recommended, they're able to lose it all with breastfeeding afterwards and really have no long-term side effects from that. So as long as you're really eating healthy meals and getting regular exercise through your pregnancy, you don't have to be neurotic about exactly how many pounds you're gaining throughout the pregnancy.
Yeah. My philosophy in it was always my body and babies, they know what we need. So as long as I was not drinking milkshakes every day and, eating birthday cake, right. I felt we were doing pretty well. Lots of good foods, and they'll do what they need. They'll take what they need. So
yeah.
I'm Dr. Sarah Humphrey, one of the obstetrician gynecologists at Columbia Memorial Hospital. I got the COVID-19 vaccine on December 23rd, which was an incredibly exciting day for me. And I feel so lucky to have been given the opportunity to have the vaccine, especially so early in its availability. And I would encourage everybody who possibly can to get this vaccine. This is going to be our path back to normal life and ability to see each other again. I know that there are fears about this vaccine because we don't have long-term safety data, but we do have long-term safety data on many, many other vaccines, and the science is there. This vaccine is safe. Doctors across the country are getting this vaccine because we believe in it and we believe it is safe. I strongly encourage everyone to go ahead and get this vaccine to protect yourself, your family, and our community.
Hey there, it's Felicia. Thanks for listening. I'd love to include your questions or comments in an upcoming episode. To leave me a message, please call 503-338-4654. If you've got a health question, I'll do my best to get you an expert answer. Again, that number is 503-338-4654. Now let's get back to our guest. Well, what are common concerns or questions that women come in with?
Coffee, that's a big one. So there's kind of the literature kind of is all over the map, and that, there are some websites that people go to that says, no, you absolutely can't drink coffee when you're pregnant. And, basically from the literature, generally 1 to 2 cups of coffee, maybe even 3, is likely safe in pregnancy, but a lot of women tend to be more cautious than this. We tend to recommend, 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine, kind of capping that in a day. So whether you're getting all of that from coffee or getting some of it from tea or chocolate, kind of trying to keep it under that is what most people recommend. Although, again, we don't really have any great evidence that caffeine can be harmful above that limit. Herbal teas, a lot of women have a lot of questions about teas that they can get over the, at the grocery store. Absolutely everything has a warning on it that says talk to your healthcare provider before consuming, whether it's ginger tea or something that we often recommend in pregnancy for nausea and vomiting and things like that. But, generally, most herbal teas that you can buy at the grocery store are just fine as long as you're not taking it in medicinal doses and drinking 10 cups a day, everything in moderation. So kind of same philosophy in pregnancy as there is for life in general. You can overdo it on anything, but probably 1 or 2 cups a day of anything is fine. There are a few herbs that you do definitely want to avoid in pregnancy, but most of these aren't generally found in over-the-counter teas. Probably the only one that I can think of that I have seen in a tea is St. John's wort, and that's usually not recommended in pregnancy. Yarrow, licorice, rhubarb, ginseng, those are some of the other ones that we would recommend staying away from in pregnancy. And then a lot of women ask about foods that they should avoid too, because that's another thing, is all of a sudden when you get pregnant, people are saying, oh, well, you shouldn't be eating this, this, and that. And certainly, we as a practice make kind of some basic recommendations, but I think people take it into their own hands from there and kind of consider what makes sense for them and kind of what the risks are. Overall, we recommend washing fruits and veggies really well. So definitely eat your fruits and vegetables, but make sure you wash them a couple times. Avoiding any sort of undercooked meat or poultry, just because that can sometimes carry salmonella or E. coli or toxoplasmosis. Avoiding any raw eggs or raw fish or raw shellfish. So I know a lot of women are really sad about not eating sushi when they're pregnant, but generally we recommend staying away from that. Raw dairy products can sometimes carry listeria, so that's another thing to stay away from. Deli meats, we get questions about a lot. The reason that those sort of became off limits is because a number of years ago, there was a big outbreak in turkey meat, like turkey cold cuts of listeria. Listeria has popped up in weird places since then. Like there was an outbreak in cantaloupe, there was an outbreak in ice cream. It's kind of hard to know where it's going to pop up. I usually just recommend if you're going to eat cold cuts, make sure you heat them up first. And that way that would kill any bacteria that has developed on the surface of it. So that's another thing that people ask about. Definitely processed foods and soda and sugar, definitely cutting that out if you can. And then fish that's high in mercury, we also recommend avoiding because even a little bit of mercury can be harmful for baby's development. Fish is great to eat in pregnancy. So if you can eat fish 1 or 2 times a week or take an omega-3 or a fish oil supplement, that's really important for baby's developing brain. But there are certain fish out there, more the fish that are high on the food chain. So like king mackerel, barramundi, shark, swordfish, those are the fish that tend to be higher in mercury that we should avoid. So if you can, eating wild salmon and herring and sardines, those are kind of the 3 fish that are highest in omega-3s and lowest in mercury. So those would be the 3 go-tos.
Well, fortunately, we've got a lot of salmon around here, and they're easy to find. So, yeah. Well, so it sounds like a lot of the things on the list of things to avoid are around food poisoning.
Yes.
Not getting sick on top of being pregnant. So that's the cold cuts with the possibility of listeria. That's the raw milk, and probably raw cookie dough is probably off the list, stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And some of those things, it's not necessarily more dangerous when you're not more likely to get sick from raw eggs or raw fish when you're pregnant. However, the stakes are a little bit higher because if you do end up vomiting or with diarrhea, you can get dehydrated, or if you get a fever, that can be harmful for babies. So that's kind of why we recommend being really careful. I'd say listeria is kind of the exception. That's the one that can be really harmful for the developing fetus if you get it while you're pregnant. So that's definitely, staying away from raw dairy products and making sure you heat up deli meats is kind of the big one there.
Okay. And during pregnancy, there's always a lot of complaints too, as far as comfort. Things like constipation or nausea or heartburn or things like that. Are there certain things that people can do to avoid those discomforts? Are there things they can eat?
Absolutely. Food has a huge role in that. So in the first trimester, really throughout the pregnancy, if you're feeling nauseated, ginger can really help, either ginger tea or ginger chews or even ginger capsules that you can get. Peppermint can sometimes really help as well. Usually people like to take that in a tea. And then also timing when you eat and the amount that you're eating. So instead of eating a big breakfast, lunch, and dinner, having really small, frequent snacks just to keep a little something in your belly at all times can sometimes really help with nausea. And usually pairing a protein and a carbohydrate. So eating like crackers and cheese or carrots and hummus and something that can just give you something right away and then keep your stores going for a little bit. So those are kind of the things that you can do for nausea. Heartburn is another really common one in pregnancy. So again, those small frequent meals can sometimes help with that. Standing up or make sure that you're sitting upright for at least 30 minutes after eating can help with heartburn. Sometimes drinking a little bit of milk after each meal can sometimes help tamp down the acidity and help with heartburn. And avoiding spicy foods or chocolate or caffeine, because sometimes those can be triggers for that as well. You mentioned leg cramps earlier, but sometimes those can be caused if you have an imbalance of magnesium or calcium stores. So making sure that you're getting enough magnesium, getting enough calcium, and also making sure that you're getting enough iron, because an iron deficiency can sometimes cause muscle cramping or restless leg syndrome. That's a big one that we see from iron deficiency as well. We talked about constipation a little bit earlier before too, but yes, that is very common in pregnancy, and making sure that you're eating a diet that's really rich in fiber. So again, those whole grains, raw vegetables, those types of things. and hydration. Hydration is so important in pregnancy, and probably none of us drink enough water in our daily lives, but you really should be drinking at least 8 to 12 full glasses of water a day in pregnancy. So that's usually around 64 to 96 ounces at least every day, and that can kind of help move things through. And then sometimes in the third trimester, some women get a lot of edema and swelling, especially in their legs and feet. Sometimes using something like a dandelion root tea or a grapefruit juice, those can sometimes be natural diuretics that can kind of help flush out some of that extra liquid as well.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a lot to absorb. So if you were going to leave somebody with 2 key things to remember, what would they be?
In terms of nutrition, I'd say lots of water and lots of fruit and vegetables. So we should be eating 8 to 10 servings of fruits and veggies every day. So those are kind of the best things that you can be doing for your health.
8 to 10, that's a good goal to strive for.
Yes.
That's a lot.
I know. Most of us don't get that.
No, but we should. So even if we're not pregnant, we should be getting a lot of fruits and veggies. So
yes, absolutely.
Well, Corinne, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing this great information. There's lots to cover, and our listeners probably don't know, but I'm going to out you a bit. You did a lot of organic farming at one point during your training as a nurse midwife, correct?
Yeah, it was actually before, and during, I guess. Before I went back to school for midwifery, I worked on a number of organic farms for a bunch of years and loved it, and then decided to go back to grad school to become a midwife. And then in grad school, I managed an organic farm out at the nursing school, and we kind of had veggies, but then we also had a whole herbal garden out there that was specific to women's health and herbs and women's health.
That's so fun. So you are definitely an expert in this area.
Well, I still love my vegetables.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Felicia.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Felicia Struve, and this has been an episode of Hands on Health, brought to you by Columbia Memorial Hospital in Astoria, Oregon. CMH is an independent, not-for-profit health system that provides comprehensive, person-centered care in Northwest Oregon.